Logic, School of Management. It is simple logic.
Welcome to Logic School of Management presents Business Sense. This is an entrepreneurial conversation during the COVID times. Today, this is my first conversation. So I'm doing a Harishri here with a very eminent person, Rajesh Nair, who is the partner of EY India based at Bangalore. If one has to speak about Rajesh Nair, there is so much to speak about. Rajesh Nair is a partner with EY. Rajesh Nair has very exhaustive experience of working with Tata's Group, with KPMG, with consulting, etc. He has been working with EY for close to about a decade now. He has been looking after Kerala, Karnataka, and South India. Fundamentally, he has been looking at the market linkages, marketing and market linkages. In the process, he had done yeoman services to Kerala, both at governmental level as well as at entrepreneurial level. Rajesh has contributed a lot in Thai, wherein he went on to become the Thai Kerala chapter president. And during his time, Thai Kerala chapter went on to become the best chapter across the planet, actually. So that was the achievement, Rajesh Nair. Very committed person, very down to earth, and always positive. If you have to ask me what is Rajesh Nair, I'm yet to find an iota of negativity from him, actually. And considering many people know that I'm a very critical level of a person. So if I have to say that Rajesh Nair is actually all positivity personified, that is true. Okay. So I'm going to talk to Rajesh Nair about our current times, about consulting, and about the future. Okay. Now, of course, my name is S.R. Nair. I am an entrepreneur, an adjunct professor, an author, and a mentor. Okay. Rajesh, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
As I've told you, I'm doing my Harishri of this show with you. Mm-hmm. I really feel privileged. You have both been a friend and a colleague, and many instances an advisor too. Okay, and I keep you at very high esteem. We at Kerala had gained a lot out of your competence and experience, as well as the fraternity. That is particularly the entrepreneurial fraternity that too, the SMEs and startup had immensely gained out of it. Rajesh, just to say, we are going through very bad times. And we don't need to explain it. Simply saying that COVID times, that itself will take care of the whole thing. The essence of whatever we are going to say. So now, my question is, as an EY person, as a true professional, as a person who had been watching the industries, about the countries, about the global trade, the global commerce, entrepreneurship, and the growth of it, etc. 1 year back, did you ever think that planet will go through such a horrific experience?
I think completely nobody would have predicted anything of this sort happening. And why 1 year? Even 6 months back, or maybe even 3 or 4 months back, we would not have predicted that something like this would happen.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a little deeper into that. See, you work for one of the top 4 consulting houses in the world, and EY is a very reputed name at that. Now, EY as an organization, in its wisdom, did it ever think that a scenario like this will happen ever?
I think the earliest inclination that something like this could possibly happen is when we started getting travel advisories towards the end of January, saying that some of these countries have the COVID-19 spurt, and you should be careful when you plan your travel there. This was late January, and then of course in February the news started getting confirmed, and then it spread across to countries. So that way, from a risk management point, we were slightly earlier. We even did internally we got people to work from home much before the country went into lockdown.
Okay. Yeah, at the early stages, because I believe it is in November and December that actually it came into being at Wuhan.
Yeah.
Though there had been some confusion about reporting, etc., happening, and that by end December and beginning January, they said this is now getting into an epidemic. And even at that time, the basic communication through WHO was that it will not go through. It will not spread from human to human, but then later that also has happened. It is only by March 13th that WHO actually declared as a pandemic. Now, from a perspective, Rajesh, do you think that WHO actually delayed announcing the pandemic, or is it? Do you think, or it was right of them to basically observe everything, all angle, and then declaring it's a pandemic?
So some of these, I'm not competent to to judge as well, sir. So first of all, WHO is not, it's not an organization at least I work with personally,
Yeah.
and some of these medical decisions at least I'm completely incompetent to comment, and I don't even know what are the parameters they look at, and how they will declare something as a pandemic, etc. So I have very limited view on this.
Okay, I've taken that way. Now, there is another way of looking at it, Rajesh. If you really look at it, the Europe, that too, the rich nations of Europe as well as the US of A, the way at which it has actually exploded into these countries, and the way and the helplessness that most of this nation had shown in managing this virus, and the death that has happened, one could not surmise that it could happen in this manner, particularly at these developed nations. What went wrong in your observation in these nations?
Again, so I sort of have to sort of qualify that this is completely, my take on the whole thing. It's not
Yeah,
the
yeah,
firm's
firms. Yeah,
opinion,
I
or it's
understand.
not
Yes.
the EY opinion.
Okay.
So I think we all took it a little lightly to begin with,
Okay.
and then and once it started happening, I think even things like lockdown, etc., a lot of countries didn't want to do it, and maybe the thinking at that point of time was, livelihood is more important, and how dangerous can a virus be, was the question. And we are all these, we've had many such spurts in the past, but we have ably overcome this. And even if they say that the ability of this virus to spread is far more virulent and far more capable, we still will not get affected. So I think there was a sense of disbelief and a sense of lethargy in
Yeah.
probably getting into very strong steps, and hence probably some of these places lost time. India, I would say there is a little bit of heads up we got, because we started having cases, and we started having spurts after we saw some of these countries having critical. So probably we took a slightly more conservative route, and started the lockdown, etc., came in immediately at the onset itself, because because at least maybe that's what the government decided at that point of time, that we need to be proactive and just close down everything, and let's focus on the medical side and the lives.
Rajesh, still, even though many of the countries, or almost all of the countries, except for some Scandinavian nations like Sweden, Norway, etc., most of the nations had closed down or they've locked in, including USFA. But still, there's a very strong thought prevailing upon some of the nations, including US, that the business should open up and lockdown should go away, and it is business that matters. And if it doesn't happen, the whole country will go bankrupt and come down. What do you think of this particular view that okay, things have to open up even before the pandemic is actually contained or broken, or the curve is flattened and things like that?
So I think it's that classical debate which is happening in these times, in terms of how important is lives over livelihood, even if perhaps at the cost of livelihood going awry, we should still conserve more of lives, and prevent some of those things. So that debate, I think different countries would have taken different directions depending on the respective leadership in those countries. And some countries also had an opinion that what is life after all if there is no livelihood which is available 1 month down the line, and
Yeah.
hence some of the a lot of countries have not really taken the hard route for lockdowns, and they still have some economy working while some parts of it is closed.
Okay. Not the firm's view. What is your personal view on this? Is it lives or livelihoods?
No, I think it's both. I don't think we can. I can take a. This is not a. This is not this or that kind of a situation. I think it has to be a fine mix of both.
So both
And
matters.
I know immediately. I think lives is the first priority. If you ask me, that's my personal thing.
Yeah.
If you ask me, I think lives is what we should take care of immediately, and livelihood. I mean, between if I had to choose one at gunpoint, then I would probably choose lives right now.
Right. Okay. Now, many of the organizations, including yours too, had come out with many suggestions and many advisories and many very deep studies onto this. And then there are predictions about what and when and how to contain and when to get over with that. So, what is EY's view about the pandemic dipping or the pandemic management and control?
So the firm is not given a rather there is no press release or any public statement in terms of when the pandemic will ease and things like that. And I don't think, because there is a medical aspect which we can't predict, so there's no advisory on that side which we have given. What we have given is given the current situations, and some of this is very contextual in terms of a day-to-day basis. So
Okay.
our internal emailers and the opinions that we give to clients is also very contextual in terms of this is what I'm telling you on April 28th,
Hmm.
and this is based on what we know today. Whatever advice we are giving advices in three frames: what you need to do now as a firm,
Okay.
what we need to do next, uh, and then what do we need to do beyond. So something which is very immediate, which is, let's say, right now to probably a month, and then the next phase is probably in the next quarter or in this quarter, and then beyond is after that 1 quarter. What is it that you would require to do? And
Would you
that's
mind saying it? Okay. Is it something confidential in nature, or do you have
no,
can
no,
give us?
no, no.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a framework we use for even advisors.
Okay.
So
Okay.
wherever it is, the broad view is, we look at now, which means it's about responding to the crisis as companies focus on, the business continuity and crisis planning. So right now it's about just keeping the lights on, and how do we ensure safety of people, etc. And then that's what, and business continuity, any crisis to be mitigated, etc. That comes in the now part. The
Yeah.
next part is largely about managing, a restricted business. We are restricted from multiple regions, and how do we lead through when during this ongoing disruption. And
Okay.
beyond, of course, is that frame where we are saying that we have to bounce back from these challenges and build a very resilient enterprise for tomorrow. And we need to probably even reframe the future and figure out what is the best way to go forward. So again, I think, to put it bluntly, the kind of conversations I have with the team also is use this time to probably slow down a bit, connect with clients and make sure they're well. Is there something that we can do for them during this time phase? And keep building your muscles, and keep exercising for the time when it really takes off, so that when things become normal and you're the first off the block, and
Okay.
you can really go faster than some of many others at that time.
Many of the consultants and many of the experts are saying that okay, we have to now look at the world as pre-COVID and post-COVID. You subscribe to that view?
There could be some changes. Yeah, I mean, there is some logic in some of these things. For example, I think the entire impetus which globalization was getting people will start thinking twice
Okay.
whether globalization vis-a-vis building a self-sufficient nation is more important than globalization,
Okay.
where we are not overly dependent on supply chain crises and supply chain risks of, as like what we are seeing today. So if it's a localized supply chain, would it reduce our risks going forth, etc.? So some bit of deglobalization, if I may, is something that companies will look at. So there could be, there is a pre and post COVID kind of situation. A lot of things. Even in terms of, I think one of the immediate aftermath also would be about spends. We'll enter into a region where probably we'll take a slower look at anything which is there will be a clear demarcation between discretionary and non-discretionary spends. Like
Okay.
my as you know, I come from a fairly middle class background, and my father used to say that whenever you look at your monthly income and your savings, um, you know, normally what we follow is your monthly income minus your expense is what you eventually have as savings, and then
Yeah.
savings is whatever is left as savings. And he always used to say that no, that's not the way you should look at it. You should look at income minus savings, and that savings needs to be a particular percentage or a particular number. And then if there is something else, then that should be what you should live your
Your
expenses
means
with.
should be with that. Oh,
Yeah, within the
that's great.
means.
I really appreciate the perspective. So probably, while you said the middle class sentiments, etc., actually, but it was a very wise decision, telling a wise sort of a concept, telling people that okay, look at life in this manner. Okay, saving must be a fixed factor. The variable factor should be the expenses that you do, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Recently, I've heard that, okay, Virgin Australia had closed down. 60,000 people have lost their job. It has busted. And there are so many other organizations actually are on the verge of collapse. That's bigger, larger organizations. You can think about SMEs, which is going to be very, very tough time because pre-COVID also SMEs had gone through some very tough times like demonetizations and challenges of GST, and then and specific to Kerala and some other part of the country, floods and things like that. Now this COVID. So if you really look at it, do you? I mean, is it going to be ground zero upwards post COVID, or do you think that okay, there'll be some via media that they will find to work upon post COVID time as far as SME business is concerned?
So, as you said earlier, so I tend to take a fairly optimistic view here, and
Okay.
I would still think that if they have if they manage to survive this time, and if they just keep strong during this time, they'll there is the economy will boom up. This is not a permanent situation, and that's what any any situation has shown in the past. We've had a lot of these diseases in the past as well, as as old as the Spanish flu, which is close to
Yeah.
100 years back.
Yeah. 100 years back.
And then
Yes.
several of these outbreaks which came, and the world sort of recuperated in a much faster fashion. I mean, the recent a lot of people say that I heard a lot of economists write that the SARS thing which happened in China sort of gave impetus to the entire online e-commerce
Okay.
e-commerce in China, and even a company like Alibaba was born out of that particular crisis.
All right. Okay.
So likewise, I'm sure a lot of these companies will find its feet for the
Rajesh,
time
one
being.
hears about, yeah, thank you. Yeah, one hears about a lot of new normals, including simple things like namastes and masks, and going up to the social distancing and e-learning and e-commerce and deliveries and all those things. So some of those new learnings or new normals, it is expected to stay for a longer duration, and some of them may actually die away after some time. What
Sure.
is your view on some of these new normals, Rajesh?
So I think in the immediate future, the masks and social distancing maybe the norm, and especially where when you're moving in public transport, and when you're in situations where there is a lot of density of people, you will be a lot more careful than what you were earlier. So that's
Okay.
definitely there. I think one area which could be there is this entire work from home
Yeah.
culture. I think now organizations are looking at that as a reality. So which also
Yes.
means they will look at business models where why don't we start looking at support functions functioning out of their own homes, or coming to office perhaps 1 day a week or 2 days a week. Some of us were calling it flexi timings, especially for helping some of the women employees to settle at work. but that is something which we will progressively see. So some interesting conversations we are having with clients also is on that side, where they're saying that, okay, suppose this becomes a reality, and large financial institutions and large companies with lots of people, they're saying that let's start looking at a model where, and you yourself would have, I mean, I've heard you speak about gig economy quite a lot.
Yeah, that's what I was going to.
So
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
so the entire gig economy, etc. It's been a people have been on that. I don't want a complete employment, but I want the freedom to work for multiple organizations at any point of time, which is like an extended consulting kind of work style,
yeah, yeah.
where I say that I'll work probably 6 months a year, and 6 months I'll do what I want and whatever. So some of those things I guess will stay back. The conversations we are hearing is also the IT impact of all this.
That
So
is right.
so if we are logging in from home, I may be looking at it. I may be logging into my company network from a mobile at times, or from a
Yes,
laptop at times. So then there is
yes,
this entire work from home security issue which has to be looked at. So cyber and some of these things will take a lot of impetus. I think as again one of those WhatsApp groups which we saw in our groups was which is this entire digital the impetus which digital got has been because
yeah.
of this entire virus, and people are now looking at digital solutions everywhere.
Right. So there's a small flip side to it. There's a flip side to it. Actually, I also have been talking to many of these employees, particularly women, and they find okay, it is a cultural change, and they're undergoing a cultural shock because they have been always working at home. Some of them in IT had been used to working at home. Otherwise, they were always working at the office. Here, there's a situation that is emerging where the women are expected to do both office work as well as a home work, and then looking after a lot of people inside the home during this lockdown period, etc., which is creating some level of stress onto them. What is your view on that? Will it continue, or will it be surmounted over a period of time? What do you think?
I think it'll. I hope it'll get surmounted. And very frankly, looking at our young workforce, at least I see my teams, and I see a lot of people in our teams where men are also equally, helping out,
Yeah,
with some of the domestic chores. And I think probably it'll also bring in, bringing that amount of sharing of work at home
sharing of
as well.
work is
Yeah,
yeah.
sharing. I hope it'll happen. Yeah, maybe if you've not been doing something for 40 years of your 50 years of your life,
Yeah.
it's a difficult transition. But I see a lot of senior men also, people who are more than my age also sort of helping out at home. And
Oh yeah, I do.
yeah,
Not that I'm forced to do, but then I know. Essentially, it is a question of an understanding as to what is the time that we go through, and then we have to
yeah,
take care actually. And particularly
absolutely.
when we have, suppose the members go up or we have more work to do, if you don't share that, then it's going to be a tough situation as far as a lady of the house is. They call it LOH, lady of the house is concerned.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, Rajesh. Now coming to consulting during the COVID times, does consulting go at the same pace, or consulting also had suffered as other industries had suffered?
so of course, if you look at the overall pace, since the economy slows down, consulting will also sort of slow down to some extent.
Okay,
But then it's also an opportunity for us to help a lot of clients. So we see a lot of clients, and we see clients across industries.
yes,
One of the first reasons you would hire a consultant is because he or she has more exposure of more firms, even within
okay,
the sector and outside the sector.
okay,
And some of us are able to bring in that experience of different sectors into a new sector,
okay,
and you use some of that experience to enhance value and create efficiency and all that. So because of that, so the conversations, etc., is increased. Our kind of consulting work, some bit of work from home is also possible. So
okay,
it's possible for us to, so like progressively I am seeing clients becoming extremely comfortable with these online meetings,
yeah,
where people come on to Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and
or WebEx or things like that.
our ability to manage some of these conversations, which we thought was never possible if you were sitting in a different city, is now. And these are not very complicated tools. So,
Yeah.
we are not using a telepresence or any such complicated tool, but we are just using a normal VC, and a lot of serious discussion and serious decisions get taken as well. So that's a good sign even for a consulting kind of environment.
Yeah, Rajesh, what are the new normals that is going to be in consulting after this? Will that be having certain new normals in consulting? As you said, there is one is work from home, which you said, and second you said that a lot of meetings which will become online. Any other new normals that you see which will impact the consulting industry?
See, I think one of those things is, this entire business strategy. We used to say that, look at business strategy, look at a 5-year strategy and 10-year strategy. So because of technology, all those, that number of 5 years, 10 years was anyway getting shortened.
Yeah.
Now, I think you'll have to look at even shorter cycles in terms of your business strategy. Business continuity planning is it's a new subject.
Okay.
Probably, I mean, a lot of large companies had discussions around it, but whoever has not taken it seriously will now take it seriously. Everybody will look at contingencies and, how do we manage during contingencies. Kerala, the two floods, and even before that, a little bit of Nipah onslaught, etc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are sort of now getting very clearly onto the business continuity planning sort of frame. So that will again be another new normal within organizations. And at least for the short period, as I said, what is discretionary and what is not discretionary will definitely get debated in a lot of organizations.
As a person and as a professional who had worked long in Kerala and also helped a lot of people and organizations in Kerala, and also part of many professional organizations in Kerala, uh, you see, do you think that a major changeover or major change will happen in our business environment, or will it continue like that? What is your thoughts on this?
In terms of a huge change, there may not be a very large change which is happening. I'm really hopeful that a lot of, we'll come out with some positive lessons. Uh, we'll start becoming a lot more financially prudent when we look at our books and,
Yes.
balance sheets and all that.
Okay.
Um, Whoever was not looking at cash as an important, item will now start looking at cash. There
Okay.
will also be people, a basic thing which will happen is, people will start looking at pivoting some of their business models to ensure that the cash cycles are shorter, and they get some of the money that they get. All these all the
But
startups
Rajesh, one
will.
second, there's a challenge, So when I see as a seller, when I want to reduce the cash cycle shorter, as a buyer, you would like to expand the cash cycle larger. So where
Yeah.
do we find a via media into this?
So again, I don't think there'll be an answer, sir. It'll be like a constant negotiation in terms of how the buyer and seller handle cash. So it'll always be a negotiation now, and something that we didn't think about earlier.
Yeah.
Will definitely be at the top of the mind when we negotiate deals. So we
Okay.
would want to have an upfront idea on, how much cash is coming in, when is it coming in. If it is milestones, how do I prepone some of the milestones and, get cash faster.
We one of the competencies that Kerala has had was the tourism industry, which is linked up to travel. And as you always been speaking, it is always a force multiplier. But then
Yeah.
that is going to suffer a lot because travel is going to be restricted. Therefore, tourism also is going to be restricted, isn't it? So, what do you think? Because Kerala is one of the Kerala's the revenue streams is to be that other than the money order economy that we work upon, that also is going to be suffering. Now, do you think will there be a shift that is happening on Keralites to move into agriculture, or we will not move into agriculture because we are always this intellectual workforce sort of or
Yeah.
intellectual level of a thing that is within the minds of an average Malu. What do you think?
I'm hoping that we will start using a lot more technology in agriculture than what we were using earlier.
Okay.
So the entire agriculture part will get some bit of impetus. And as I said, we are looking at self-sufficiency now. There were times when we said that vegetables are not available in Kerala because of cross-border movement being stopped, and we don't make some of these vegetables, and hence some of these vegetables are not available.
Yes.
So I'm sure a lot of intelligent entrepreneurs and agriculturists will start figuring out, how to make some of those vegetables and fruits in Kerala.
Okay.
See,
What about
tourism.
cash crops like
Yeah, of course, cash
yeah.
crops, and we'll have to see how the Kerala state, does Kerala state look at agriculture as an industry now? It was never classified as an industry, but
Yeah.
to give it that respective industry focus, will they classify it as industry? And on the tourism
Okay.
part, see, we have seen a very interesting take after the last big floods. The amount of
Yeah.
tourists we had in Kerala was much higher than in a similar period in another year. So I'm
Yeah.
also hoping that the tourism will also sort of revive itself in full in full flurry. A lot of entrepreneurs who are in tourism in Kerala. Some of them are extremely intelligent, and I'm sure they will their business models will also reflect that kind of far thought into how to sustain tourism in the future.
As a final parting comment or parting advice to SME entrepreneurs, early entrepreneurs, as well as to startups, you have any specific suggestion or advice to make, Rajesh?
So I think see, startups. I don't think there will be any dearth of funding. It may sort of go a little slow right now because the existing funds would also want to look at what is happening to their existing investments. So they would want to help places where they've already made investments and sort of buckle up those companies first.
Yes.
But investment money always looks for good paper, and when I say good paper, I mean good companies with good business models.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of new business models will emerge, and entrepreneurs should not shy away from pivoting if they feel that they have a business which is not yielding results in such an area, or is at high risk when something like this happens.
Okay.
Even at some small level, even the smaller SMEs and MSMEs and startups should look at things like business continuity planning. What will happen next, and how, and cash. We were very I still don't understand, but a lot of people were saying that I made so much of losses, so I'll make money, and
Mhm.
my valuation should be XYZ, and my cost of acquisition is, and I can be negative, and people, that mindset of I can be negative for another 10 years and then get funding and all, some of those things will have to change.
Will have to change. Okay. Yeah, Rajesh, it has been, and you're a very prolific speaker, and I can continue speaking with you for hours and hours together. And just, we say that it just flows in. But for this interview, which since we have thought that it is going to be a limited one, I would like to close it here.
Sure.
It has indeed been an immense pleasure as well as privilege from my side to have undertaken this interview with you. I wish you all the very best, and I'll keep seeing you around. Thank you very much,
Sure,
and
sure.
good
Thanks
night.
a lot, sir. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.